Hi there, and welcome to Management 621, Entrepreneurship and New Ventures. My name is Mike Stoll. I'm the director of the Inland Empire Center for Entrepreneurship and also a professor of entrepreneurship here at Cal State San Bernardino. And I'm going to be your instructor for this this term. And this introductory module for Management 621 is just meant to give you some basics about the class, get you set up so that the rest of the class will make sense, and just a general orientation to get you rolling. By way of introduction for this class, Management 621, just to put it in context, you're taking this as kind of an elective as part of your online program, but this is a required course for our MBA students that have selected their focus area as entrepreneurship, and it's actually the very first class they take. So it's an introductory, broad-based kind of overview course on entrepreneurship and the creation of new businesses. The history of the class, it actually goes back. It was the very first class we taught in our MBA program in entrepreneurship back in 2001, and I was actually the instructor that developed the class and taught it originally. And I still teach it occasionally. Obviously, I'm teaching it this time with you. Every few years I teach it. I think the last two times I've taught it were for our regular MBA students as well as our executive MBA students that selected it as one of their electives in the executive program. So it's a fun class to teach. I've always enjoyed working with the students in this class, and hopefully that this experience proves no different for both you and I in terms of the challenges of the class and also enjoying it. So by way of getting started, I'll kind of take you through sort of just a really brief overview of the class, and we'll kind of take step by step and wrap up, and then you'll be ready to move on to Module 1. So in terms of introductory to the class, basically what we're going to do in this module is give you just a really quick look at the objective of the course, what we want to accomplish with Management 621. Take a real quick look at what you're going to be learning in the class, so the basic concepts that we're going to be and topics that we're going to be covering. Since we're going to be learning things, it'd be interesting to know how you will be learning, so what the structure and process is of the class. And like any class I've taught at both the graduate and the undergraduate level, there are always some specific limitations to each course. So we'll talk a little bit about those. And as well, everybody comes into a class with certain expectations, both the instructor and the students, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about expectations. And then in particular, my entrepreneurship classes rely a great deal on a focus on discussion and interaction, and then also on learning. And so I'm going to talk about a little bit about discussions and what I call takeaways. And then lastly, we'll talk just really briefly about my background, so you have a sense of who I am and why the heck I'm teaching this class. And hopefully that'll help you as we progress through the quarter, or the term. I'm sorry, I keep saying quarter, but you guys are on 5-week terms, so not quite the same as a quarter. So let's move on and talk about the objective of the course. So when we're looking at this particular class, the objective is pretty simple, I think. Whether we really want you to come out of this class understanding who entrepreneurs are and what it is they actually do. And the word entrepreneur, in my experience, is kind of loaded. People have preconceived notions about who entrepreneurs are. If you see this little wanted job announcement about the entrepreneur, it is an exciting, exhausting, high-risk type of endeavor. And but in some ways, entrepreneurs aren't always what they seem, and what they do isn't always what it seems to be. And so this class, the objective is to kind of peel back the layers of the onion and see if we can figure out who entrepreneurs really are, and match them up about what our preconceived notions, if any, are about entrepreneurs, and get a better sense of what they actually do. We know they create new businesses, but how do they go about it, and what are the things that they actually do to create those businesses in a variety of contexts? And when we talk about entrepreneurship in Management 621, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship from a broad perspective, from the basic, somebody that's creating a for-profit business, to somebody that may be creating an entrepreneurial venture, or a social enterprise in the nonprofit sector, or we may be talking about people that are doing very entrepreneurial things, working for others. I think my experience, which I'll allude to later, is that I've had a chance to dabble in entrepreneurship and apply the entrepreneurial mindset and way of doing things in a number of different contexts. So I think what we're going to cover in this class, well, in fact, I know what we're going to cover in this class has a pretty broad application, but the title of the course speaks for itself. It's about entrepreneurship and new ventures, and entrepreneurship implies that something entrepreneurial is happening, which means people are doing it, and it's resulting in new ventures in a variety of different contexts. So that's the objective of the course. Let's just figure out who entrepreneurs are and what they actually do, and to some extent, how does that apply to you personally? So it's always exciting to learn a little bit more about yourself, and this class will force you to do a little bit of that from the perspective of what being an entrepreneur is. What we're going to cover in the course is really broken up. We can kind of break it up by the modules, but I'll go over the basics. Really, first and foremost, as I noted, we're going to tackle who entrepreneurs are. What is that they, what if we try to profile an entrepreneur, who are they? What characteristics and traits do they have? What behaviors do they exhibit? If you ask most people, they'll say, well, they start businesses. But who are entrepreneurs? If we had to really profile them and come up with the traits and the characteristics and the behaviors, what would they look like? So we're going to delve into that, and that's really Module 1 is going to go into really a lot of detail about who they are, and is entrepreneurship a way of thinking? Is it in their DNA? Is it a mental illness, as has been alluded to by some? We're going to explore that in the first part of the class. The next part of it is we're going to look at the entrepreneurial process, and is creating a business, is being entrepreneurial, does it have a process? And if it does, what does that process look like? So we're going to explore that as well in this class. I'm fond of saying that every business starts as an idea, and so if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to have an idea. And those ideas have to represent a business opportunity. And so we're going to take a look at the process of where ideas come from. How do you generate ideas? How do you recognize opportunities? All the various aspects that go along with that. We're going to ask you to tap into your creativity and think about coming up with ideas for businesses. The businesses could be something that you would start on your own. They could be businesses that you could propose within the organization you currently work for. They could be things that solve social problems, but we're going to take you through the process. How do we generate ideas? And then ultimately, how do we know whether those ideas are any good and represent true business opportunities? Next, we're going to look at startup models. If we're looking at entrepreneurs and they're kind of going through a process and they're creating new ventures and they're starting with these really cool ideas that represent business opportunities, how do they actually start the business? What are the models they use to approach creating this new venture? And part of that is hooked to whether the idea is an opportunity, and some of the models we look at range in, they kind of vary from very simple to a little bit more complicated, and we'll kind of explore all those and see, are any of them any good? Is one better than the other? My own experience over the years, not only involved as an entrepreneur, which you'll hear a little bit more about later, but also in consulting with and supporting and helping entrepreneurs, is there's a lot of different ways to slice this apple, and some are actually better than others, and we're going to kind of explore that in this class. Next, we're going to look at resources. One of the most popular definitions that has been thrown out for consumption about entrepreneurship over the years comes from somebody that was at Harvard Business School, and they talked about, entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard for resources, currently under control. And that word resources is really important. You see the graphic there. The money, that's the first thing that most people think about when they think about starting a new business. Where am I going to get the money and how am I going to make this happen? But resources is really a much broader concept. And we're going to drill down into that concept and really kind of pick it apart and see what are resources all about from an entrepreneur's perspective, and how do entrepreneurs not necessarily own resources, but how do they control them to the benefit of creating a new venture and growing it. So we're going to take a look at resources. And last but not least, we're going to look at exit strategies. Every business has a lifespan. And is that lifespan short? Is it long? How long are you, if you're the entrepreneur, going to be in that business? Are you going to be with it for its entire duration? Are you going to be in it for only a few years? We're going to talk about what exit strategies are and whether entrepreneurs actually need exit strategies. So, we got a lot of material to cover coming up, as you can see from these graphics. And the reality is, and I alluded to it in my introduction, that every class has limitations. There's a whole host of things I would love to cover in this class that I'm just not going to be able to get to, because I don't want to saturate you. I don't want to overload you. So I have to be, I have to pick what I think is the most salient and impactful material that I need you to walk away with in taking this broad overview course. We just can't hit everything. So going from who our entrepreneurs are to the entrepreneurial process and ideas and opportunities and startup models like the lean process and the all-in startup and resources and exit strategies, I think that captures a nice life cycle of the entrepreneur and the entrepreneurial process and new venture creation. So in terms of the structure and process of the actual class, it's pretty straightforward. We've got this introductory module, which is kind of me helping set things up and put in a voice to the name, since we're not interacting face to face. It's this introductory module and then the 5 modules that follow that you're going to complete over the 5-week period. And the modules are outlined in the syllabus. They're outlined on Blackboard, which is the platform we're going to be using for the course. And really, it boils down into the material we're covering and then the major projects we're going to be going through. And there's essentially 5 major projects that you're going to be working on. You could call them assignments. I call them projects. One is the exploration of the entrepreneur. In this, it's really simple. I think part of understanding who entrepreneurs are is kind of talking to them. I've had the incredible opportunity to meet with hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs over the span of my life. And I'm constantly impressed, and I constantly learn something, and I'm constantly comparing what I hear from one versus the other about their experiences and what they do. So one of the projects you're going to be working on, you're actually going to have to go out and interview an entrepreneur and kind of ask them some specific questions about what makes them tick and what their experience has been. And then we're going to kind of ask you to compare that back to kind of what you've learned in the class about who entrepreneurs are. Second piece of it is you may not have any interest in being an entrepreneur, or you may be all fired up and ready to rock and roll and want to be an entrepreneur, if not now, in the future. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where you guys stand on this. But the reality is, I think one of the important things about this class is that you can understand by the end of it what your kind of entrepreneurial capacity is, and we call the personal entrepreneurial discovery. It's a short project. Over the years, I've kind of scaled it down so it's a little bit more manageable, but it asks you some specific questions. It forces you to look at your own entrepreneurial characteristics and traits and summarize all that in a final document. And I think one of the things that I've heard from students over the years is that when I've talked about redesigning the class, is they've always said, oh, please don't take that assignment out. It was so beneficial because it really forced me to take a cold, hard look at myself, and the assessments I did really gave me some insight. And in some cases, it either affirmed what I thought, or in other cases, that told the students that maybe they didn't quite have everything they needed yet to be an entrepreneur. And that's an equally valuable discovery. In fact, the very first time I taught this class, one of the students, a young lady, said, I really thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I may still one day, but she says, based on what I learned about myself and what I learned about the process, I'm not ready for it now. and I think that was a really, really important learning point. So personal entrepreneurial discovery, you're going to get a chance to go through that. We're going to take you through some really basic idea generation exercises. They're going to try and get you thinking about business opportunities, whether they're your own or for somebody else. If you want to be a corporate entrepreneur, which we'll talk about a little bit later, we're going to do some idea generation exercises. Ultimately, what we want to do is at least come up with one good idea, one promising idea. You think it has legs, you think it's got potential, and kind of do a little more detective work on it. One of the things I tell people before they start doing really intensive customer interviews and things like that is just to do a real quick profile. It's sort of like how we sum people up. We size people up at a party. We ask them a few questions and we kind of get a sense of, hey, is this somebody that we want to know more about, we want to do business with, we want to get to know them personally, we want to become friends, whatever. So we're going to take some of your ideas, or at least one of them, and we're going to subject it to this business concept profile. It's a real straightforward assignment. You're provided a template to do it, but it does require a lot of heavy lifting and detective work. Really last major project that you do in the class is the reflective paper, and I ask students in every one of my classes to, at the end of the course, to reflect back on what they've learned and see if they can put an exclamation point or a period on the process. It really provides a way to tie a bow on the class. So reflective paper, again, one of those assignments. In fact, all these assignments, as I've toyed with taking them out of the class over the years, I've heard voices crying that they wanted certain things left in. So I've left in most of what I use in my face-to-face class for you on this term. Well, I mentioned earlier before that there are some limitations and expectations for this class. First and foremost, you guys are already you got some tread worn off the tires by being in the online program. You know already that the courses are fast-paced. 5 weeks is it moves by quickly. I've only taught Management 621 a couple of times in the Executive MBA program where it was a 5-week course, so I've been through it before. But I think one of the implications of a fast-paced course is it really requires you, particularly as a student, to be on top of your game and be in charge of the learning process. In terms of I think a pretty significant limitation of this class is it's not designed to turn you into an entrepreneur, and you're not going to be ready to start a business after taking this one class. I've had students get pretty fired up about starting a business. I think that's great, and I've had other students that said, they, like I alluded to earlier, that they learned that, hey, I'm not very entrepreneurial, it doesn't really appeal to me. That's a good learning, because if you think you're entrepreneurial and you go out and you learn the hard way by investing your life savings and you put relationships at risk, it's better that you kind of explore it before you dive in, and I think this class gives you an opportunity to do that. And like I said, it doesn't, we're not covering everything you need to know to be an entrepreneur in this class. So it really is just an introduction. It's not comprehensive from that perspective. So I kind of want to throw that caveat in there. And the other piece of it for me is that entrepreneurship education, and particularly the way I've taught it over the years, it's highly experiential. We're very, very hands-on, and that's just being direct and honest, that's really, really tough to translate into an online format. And there's a few things that I would love to have you guys do in this class, but we haven't figured out yet how to really translate it into the online venue. And I hope in years to come we're able to do that. But for this time around, there's a few things that we're not going to be able to accomplish because of the experiential, hands-on nature and the interactive nature, face-to-face interactive stuff that we have to do. My bias in this course is always in every course I teach is on learning. I know you guys are concerned about your grades. I think I was as a student. That's been so long ago that I have a hard time remembering. But my bias is on learning first. Focus on learning, and usually everything else takes care of itself. When I say learning, I mean this: if you can't remember it 6 months down the road, a year down the road, if you can't remember it, you can't use it. And if you can't use it, you're at a disadvantage. And that applies to not just this class, it applies to every class you take. You really got to focus on learning and retaining the material and being able to use it in the future, because if you don't, everything you've gone through is wasted. I know firsthand that focusing on learning and being able to apply what you learn has real significant implications. And I use as an example a recent student of mine, graduated a year ago. I recently got a LinkedIn message from him, that he had just gotten a promotion, and I sent him a congratulations message back. And he shared with me, he said, this is my third promotion in the first year, working for a large company. He has a dream of being an entrepreneur down the road, but his first thing was, I want to get out, get some industry experience. I want to build networks, and I want to do all that stuff. And he's gotten 3 promotions in the first year. And he said, he goes, it's because I am able to apply what I learned. He said, I'm applying the mindset I learned, and I'm applying the lessons I learned. And he said, it's really setting me apart. It's why I'm getting these promotions, because I'm able to apply what I've learned, and I'm doing it in an entrepreneurial fashion. And he said that's really separating him from the pack. So I can't stress focusing on learning enough. And the last piece of the puzzle, and it ties into that former example I just gave, is to think like an owner. We ask all of our students in the entrepreneurship program to start thinking like an owner. And what that really means, without belaboring the point, is that business owners are responsible for everything that happens in their business. They don't pass the buck. They make things happen. They're proactive. And as students, we're not always that way. We're not always trained to be that way. So in this class, what I want students to think like is as if they're the owner. They own their experience in this class. They have to ask the questions. They have to take the initiative. They're responsible for everything they do. So I'm going to ask you as students to try and think like an owner. It is a different mindset. And I think if you apply it successfully, you're going to have a different experience in this class. My experience tells me that. Students coming back after the fact who kind of looked at me like I was from a different planet when we started talking about that later came back and said, hey, that was like one of the most important takeaways of the class, was to think like an owner, because, and as my student said previously, that's one of the lessons learned from our curriculum, and my class in particular, that he said is setting him apart, is he's thinking like an owner. He's not thinking like an employee, he's thinking like an owner. And I think that's really important. I mentioned discussions, I'm going to talk about discussions and what I call takeaways. And the one way, probably the most salient way that this course is identical to the way I teach in the face-to-face, is that discussion is a huge part of it. Obviously online you have to do a fair amount of independent work, and you're kind of in a little bit in isolation, but every module that you're going to step through in this class is going to have, at the conclusion of going through readings and videos and exercises, at the end of it is we come together as a group and we discuss. And even though I'm going to be providing some kind of what I call guided tutorials that sort of set the stage for the module and kind of give you a little bit of framework and maybe introduce a little bit of grist for the mill for the discussions, I don't like to lecture. I don't use PowerPoint. This is kind of a PowerPoint video. This is the first time I've used something like that in years. What I do with my face-to-face classes is we prepare, we come into class and we discuss and we sort things out and we go into more detail and we get new insights, and everybody participates. I'm not the leader. I'm a participant in the discussion, and so it's going to be really critical that you approach the class this way. You've got something to contribute. If you prepare, you've got something to contribute. We're going to learn something from each other in this class. I've never had a class where I didn't learn something new in working with my students, and I expect that to happen again in this course. So a big anchor for this class is the discussions. Obviously they're through Blackboard. They're a written form communication. But the content can sometimes actually be better than the face-to-face discussions, because you're all going to participate. I know in my face-to-face classes it's hard to get everybody to participate. I'm getting better at it, and depending on the group we have 100% participation, but in this one we'll definitely have 100% participation. discussions and takeaways. I covered the discussion. Now what's a takeaway? And you know, I use a technique called learning takeaways. I've been using it for many years in my class, and I think with pretty great success based on the feedback I'm getting from students. Um, Takeaways play into how our brain works. And, no matter what situation we're encountering sensory information. And so if we're in a class, for example, oftentimes in one class session, even whether it's online or face-to-face, we're getting information, we're getting visual information, we're getting auditory information. We may be doing exercises, like I may be doing creativity exercises in a class, and people are working hands-on, and so we're getting some kinesthetic sensory experience. All that stuff has to be, kind of taken in and sort of, addressed by the brain. And, it kind of moves into your short-term memory. And unless we do something with that information that's in our short-term memory, it's going to become lost in what they call rehearsal and unrehearsed and rehearsal. And so the best way, or one of the best ways to move information from your short-term memory into your long-term memory is to have some kind of repetition, or what they call rehearsal. And that helps encode the information and transfer it into long-term memory. And eventually some of that, that information is going to be lost over time, or you may have a hard time recalling it. But if we can get it into long-term memory, you can use it down the road. And so a big part of what I do in my classes is at the end of each class session, and you'll do it at the end of each module for this online class, is students have to document what are the most important concepts, most impactful concepts that they thought they learned from that class or that module. And they need to document that. And so what you'll do is at the end of every module, you'll document the 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 really, really important concepts that you think, you know what, I want to remember that. When this class is over, that's the kind of stuff I think I need to remember because I think I can use it. And so every session, or in this case every module, at the end of every module, you're going to sit back and you're going to reflect, and you're going to share what you think those concepts are that you consider to be key takeaways. And you'll do that in the discussion format, the discussion forum on Blackboard. Every student will do it, so everybody gets to see everybody's takeaways. It's a social process. There's no right or wrong answers here. I get a chance to see them. It provides an important mechanism for everybody. We get a chance to see what everybody's learning. It'll be interesting to see, because you'll see that what you think is important may not be the same thing that other people think is important. So there's a nice variation, and so that also helps kind of prod us, kind of to go, oh yeah, that's right, that was a great concept, I forgot about that, I'm reviewing my notes, I didn't think about that, so I'm going to add that to my takeaways. It's also an important mechanism for me as the instructor, because it allows me to see whether you're taking away the concepts that I think are important from my big picture perspective. I mean, obviously there's some things I think students should absolutely take out of this class, and so it provides a nice important checkpoint for me to see, hey, are the students getting what I'm hoping? So it's another thing you have to do, right? But it's I think based on the feedback from my students over the years, they've said takeaways are great. In fact, I've had students come to me and say, how come other instructors aren't using this? And my response is, well, not everybody knows this, not everybody understands it. And more importantly, as an entrepreneurship student or somebody who's taking my class, what's stopping you from using it in another class? You've learned a tool, you've learned a skill, go apply it. You don't have to be required. Think like an owner. So discussions, big part of it. We got to interact, and takeaways, we got to remember what we've been discussing. So let me jump now to my background, and then we'll kind of go into a brief sort of next steps for where you're headed in this class. My background is varied. I'm not going to give you my life story. You don't want to hear my life story. It was hard enough for me to live it so far. But I always like to tell people I've had a chance to experience entrepreneurship on multiple levels, and it's kind of run from the lemonade stand all the way to the university And so I'll kind of give you some highlights and tell you a little bit about my philosophy and what I do here at the university. I alluded to the fact that the lemonade stand, like a lot, and maybe many of you, my first entrepreneurial venture was the neighborhood lemonade stand. I would sell drinks. I sold sodas. Because my mother went through some medical problems when I was a young child. Had to learn early on how to bake and make food and do the laundry. So as an 8-year-old, I was, and maybe 8-year-olds do that now, but back then, we didn't. But I had to learn how to do all that stuff. So I would bake cookies and sell them in the neighborhood, because my friends didn't know how to bake, and if their mom wasn't home, I was the source of cookies. And so I bought candy bars. I sold magazines door to door. I did it because it was fun. It was something to do. It was I wasn't all that, and plus, it made a little extra money. I could buy sodas and candy with it. Baseball cards was my big splurge back then. But as I reflect back on it now, I was really kind of mimicking my role models, which were my parents. They started a business when I was 5 years old. So really all I kind of remember was growing up with family business and my parents talking about business around the dinner table and visiting the business and all those kind of things. So I think that really kind of piqued my interest and probably moved me in the direction of having the lemonade stand. And all those years later, growing up around a family business and starting it, working in it when I was very young, I had a great time putting in many years, moving from the lemonade stand to a manufacturing company. My family's business was an electronics manufacturer. They made avionics systems for aircraft of all different types. You'll see the photo up there, a photo pictured of one of our biggest customers, New York City Police Department. The real interesting business, a great learning ground for me, learning what it meant to be a business owner, what entrepreneurship was all about, what small business management was all about, competition and sales and marketing and purchasing and operations and manufacturing. I was blessed to be able to starting at about age 10, to work my way through the entire business to the point where I was running the company along with my father and growing the company and to great success and and had a lot of fun, a lot of great memories. Challenge with a family business though is that you have to have a shared vision. And back then I think I was still young, still relatively immature, and as they might say, full of piss and vinegar. And I had particular ideas about where I think the business could go, and that wasn't always shared with my family in terms of having a shared vision. I'm not sure, they didn't really think that the business maybe could or should go in the directions I thought. And ultimately, I think, I decided, well, if the business isn't going to go in the direction I'd like, I'm going to strike out and do some other things. And maybe eventually I'll come back to the family business, but for now I'm going to go, I'm going to go test the waters and see what else is out there. And I did. I actually ended up doing some consulting. I ended up working for an organization, an economic development organization that ran a program called the Small Business Development Center, and that they provide business advisory services and training for entrepreneurs and small business owners. It's a program that's funded in large part by the U.S. Small Business Administration. So I ended up working there, and I ended up taking over that program, running it during my tenure as the CEO of that program. We doubled in size and became the largest small business development center program of its kind in the United States. We were recognized as a model within the system across the U.S., and I won a significant award through that program, recognizing my contributions. We had a great time. We had a great team of people, but after about 6 years there, I kind of got the itch and was looking around for something to do. And while I was there, the folks up at Cal State San Bernardino, where many years ago I got my undergraduate and graduate degrees in business, had started, or we're getting ready to start something called the Inland Empire Center for Entrepreneurship. One of my former professors was spearheading the initiative. He contacted me, asked me if I wanted to get involved. I did. I helped as an advisory board member and kind of watched the program try and get off the ground. The first couple years were kind of painful. The program didn't really kind of get its legs, and eventually they asked me if I would be interested in coming up and running the program and seeing if we could bring a kind of an entrepreneurial spark to it. Since I was itching for a change, I did, and that was in 2002. And my mandate from University Administration was to grow a program, to build it. I'm proud to say that myself and our team here have built a nationally recognized Center for Entrepreneurship. We've built a nationally recognized academic program. We started with less than 20 students back in 2002. We now have almost 300. We started with basically one person in the Center for Entrepreneurship. We now have 18 and multiple faculty members. It's an exciting program to be a part of. I really love what I do. I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. I love teaching entrepreneurship. I kind of have the best of both worlds because I still get to be an entrepreneur. Like I said, from the lemonade stand in my family's business, and when I was in college, I started 2 additional businesses, to being here at the university where I get to create things and play around and experiment, take risks and do stuff. It's been really, really exciting, and I try to bring that same level of passion to my teaching. So when we interact, whether it's via email or by phone or chatting or via Skype or video conferencing or whatever, hopefully you'll get a sense that I really love this and I really want you to get the most out of your experience in the class as well. I also serve as department chair for the management department here in the College of Business and Public Administration, so I kind of have a dual role, which keeps me hopping. It's actually probably not advisable to ever do that. I'm kind of not sure why I said yes, and I probably wouldn't do it again if I had it to do over, in terms of being department chair and center director and professor all at the same time. But it's been fun and challenging, and that's what life's all about, is to have fun and address challenges. And what's more exciting for me than anything about our entrepreneurship program is working with students and seeing them move through the program and become changed people, and also take the lessons they learn in the classroom and apply it in their startups or in their corporate jobs. So that's a little bit about me. If you want to know more about me, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm happy to share anything. As I mentioned before, I was a student at Cal State San Bernardino, so I did two go-rounds here, and then got my doctorate at Case Western Reserve University, which is the best university in the state of Ohio. So there you have it. That's Mike Stoll, your instructor / tour guide / facilitator for Management 621. Now, next steps for this particular class. Please make sure you review the syllabus. I try and, it's 12 pages, and so I apologize if that's too short or too long. I'm not sure which, because I never see anybody else's. But I try and be as comprehensive as I can in the syllabus, so hopefully everything you need is in there. But you got to go through it. You got to make sure you understand it. And then if you don't, or if you're not sure about anything after looking at the syllabus, checking out Module 1, make sure you seek some clarification from me. Track me down, and I'll help you sort through it. Don't ask like a stupid question, like it's right there in the syllabus and you just didn't read it. But if you need clarification, please let me know. Beyond kind of what, going through this presentation, this introductory presentation to the class, I need you to participate in the introductory discussion before you move on to Module 1. And I know probably a lot of you have had each other in other online classes here at Cal State San Bernardino, but there may be a few of you that haven't interacted with each other. And so, if you'll bear with me and just kind of go through the brief introductory process in the discussion forum on Blackboard, I'd really appreciate it. Just tell a little bit about yourself. Just follow the prompt. Really straightforward. If you want to share a photo, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. For me, it's always great because I like to be able to put a photo, face to the people I'm working with, but not required, So, but if you can, once you've read the syllabus, you've participated in this little video exercise I'm giving you, then participated in the discussion. You're at that point, you're ready to move on to module 1. And the way I've structured the modules, and I talk about it in the syllabus, is that the modules are run for a week basically, because it's a 5-week class, 5 modules, 1 week per module. So the module will open up. It's as you're viewing this, obviously the module's open. But the way I also structure is that the next module, module 2, will open up a few days before module 1 ends. Popular thinking and online is to not give you everything all at once, because it can create some task saturation, it can create some confusion. But I do like to let them overlap a little bit, because in every class I've had, there are some students that work ahead or need to work ahead. And so, I'll open up usually 2 to 3 days before the module closes. The next module will open up so that those people that work quickly, or those people that need to work quickly because of job demands or life demands, can work ahead a little bit. But you'll see what's in each module in the syllabus, so you have a preview. It just kind of won't open up until that time. So that's what's ahead of you. I'm really looking forward to working with you guys. Like I said before, don't hesitate to track me down. I always have fun with this class. I hope you have fun with this class too. It is challenging. It is a lot of work, but that's part of the fun of the class. I've always gotten comments about our classes, that they are challenging and that they require students to dig in and do a lot of work, and that's pretty consistent with the entrepreneurial experience. If it was easy, everybody could do it, and I think and I believe that you will learn a lot in this class if you engage, and I, as the instructor, will work my butt off to help you through that process. I want you to learn as much as possible, so I'm gonna work as hard as I'm expecting you to work. So if you don't feel you're getting that, you better let me know, because that's my mantra. So looking forward to it, and hopefully I'll get a chance to not only interact with you online through Blackboard, but I'll get a chance to talk with each of you at least once, if not several times throughout the quarter. All right, good luck and have fun in Management 621.